Everyone, today we would be looking at the dimension commands in AutoCAD. So I have drawn here a rectangle and let me make small partitions to it. Okay. So this is my drawing and I wanted to give dimensions for this. Let me measure this. This is 825. I'm checking the units. The units are in meters. I'm changing it to millimeters and precision to 0. So my object is 825 millimeters by 559 millimeters. So let's look at how to give dimension for this. Now we can create a new layer for dimensions. Layer, create new layer, dim1, and the color of dimensions I would give it as gray. Okay. Now to create dimensions, you just have to click dimension here and then select the first point and then select the second point, and that's all. You get the dimensions. And sometimes the default settings makes the text too big or too small. In such cases you can go and check the size of the text. Now to alter the dimension settings, we have to check which dimension style it is in. We do not know which dimension style it is in. Say like convert it to Sebastian big letters, and then to edit the settings of dimensions you have to click DIM, enter. Sorry, D, enter. You can rename this as rename type 1 and you can click modify. You also have a preview window here so that you would know how your dimensions are going to look like. The first setting in the dimensions are lines. So this is the color. The color is selected by layer. You can give by layer or by color. You can select by layer or by color, anything you want. And the line type, here is where you select if it's a continuous line or dotted line, and the line weight, where you select the line weight of the dimension lines, and the suppression. These suppression lines are those lines that come left and right side of the text. If you see the text, I'll try to make this window bigger. Yes, I'll make this window bigger so that it's easy, you can understand. Yeah. Now if I suppress this dimension line, you see these right and left side lines on the text are disappeared. And extension lines are those lines that come from the point of dimension till your text lines. So I suppress them. Let me unsuppress, and you see those two lines, and you can also remove them or have them, and you can choose the color. It's by layer, or you can manually select a color, selected red, but I wanted to suppress them. I suppressed it. And next is symbols and arrows. In symbols and arrows, you have few symbols: arrow marks, dots, oblique, tick, small dots, triangles, integrals. Let's see. I selected arrow mark and tick, and I'm going to increase size by 10. Okay, 5, 3. Okay. So now I see there's an arrow mark on the first side and there's a tick on the second side. We can choose whatever we want and it'll appear a dot or a small dot, or you can give a box filled on either sides, box, or you can give integral, or you can give triangle. That's all up to you. What you're drawing matters. And the leader is where you want to label some part, and it's for the label. It shows how the arrow should be for the label. So just give it as arrow mark. This we'll leave it to architectural tick, and 1 second up. And the central marks you can leave it for none, You don't need to mark the center mark, which is the central mark for all the dimensions would be marked, but you don't need to mark it. And break size can be ignored. And text. So when you see the text, then okay, modify text. Yeah, and text, you have some various text styles as we discussed in the other videos. You have standard annotative text style, and you can change the font name and font style here, and then apply. So we have a standard style here. You can also select the text color and the fill color for the text, and then the text height. Now I put 3. The text height is reducing. As you can see, the tick size is 3 and the text size is just 1. So I increase the text size to 4, and as you see the difference in the preview window. And if you want to draw a box around the text frame, you can always draw a box, or you can remove the box. And how do you want the text to be placed? In vertical, center means it will be placed in the center of the line, where the line gets cut and the text will be seen. If you place above, it will sit right above the line. If you place it below, it will sit below the line. Ideally, we place it in the center. Even in the horizontal, we place it so. And there is something called text alignment, which is important. Horizontal is where all the texts are horizontally displayed, but when you give an ISO standard, the text aligns to the line, as you see. Horizontal, if you move it to horizontal, all the text is changing to horizontal. ISO standard, it is following the line. And we can give ISO standard for now. And fitting, it's best to choose either text or arrows, whichever fits the best in that given size. This is a setting which a lot of people do not work on, because we do not know what is the length of the text that we are getting inside any dimension. Now we come to primary units. As we know, we set it's a decimal. We don't need 0.00. We can just go with 0 because it is millimeters we are setting. And if you want to round it off, you can put 0. If you put 10, all your dimensions will round it off to 10. 26 will become 30, 28 will become 30, 32 will become 30. If you put 0.0, it's like 2.7 will become 3.0. 0.00 you can increase, but since we are dealing with millimeters, we just keep 0. Prefix. Prefix is to add any text in front of your dimension. Say we write is meter, and as soon as you see, it's written here is 23 meter, or millimeter is 23 millimeter. So ideally we don't write anything before or after the text, but if you want to write, you can use these options, which can just leave it as M or mm, which is good because it always denotes millimeter or meter. And the next is the settings for angular dimensions. You can also, if you're using degrees, then you can use 0, or some people use radians, some people use degrees. And then alternate units. Alternate units are also very important because most of the people deal either with two different units like feet and inches and meters, or sometimes they need meters and also millimeters to be seen next to each other. So if we display alternate units, your text will have units in the bracket next to the dimension. Say for example, we took decimal and precision is 0.1, we took multiply factor 0.1, and prefix is suffix will keep meter. And now we'll see it's written now 23 mm is 2.26 meter. So 45 mm is 4.49 meter because we already multiplied it with this and we rounded to this number. But usually people use this when they want to write feet and inches, but most of the people don't use it. They just keep the dimension raw with only primary units. Tolerances is when you have when you don't want to care about minute things like 0.001 meters, all these things, you can just give the tolerance, but it's better to keep it none. So the most important things will refresh again. It's line. In line, suppressing these lines, and check for the color, check for the tick, check for the size of the arrow, and then check for the color of the text and ISO standard. And fitting, it should be this. Primary units, if you want to add suffix, you use, and check for the decimal point for the font, and that should be fine because all the settings doesn't need to be changed all the time. So you click close and close. Now since we are having 800 millimeters, we need our text to be at least 100 millimeter size. So we modify, we go to the lines and symbols, symbols and arrows. The size of the arrows is 150 we give, and the text size is also 150 we give. And as you see, press OK, close, and you see this. And if you feel okay, 150 is too big, let's reduce this to 50 or 20. Modify, text is 20, lines and symbols is 20, text can be 25. Yes, perfect. And we'll add more dimensions from here, and then from here to here we add. If you want to continue the dimension line, you press DCO, enter, and then you continue from here, and here. Okay, sorry. DIM dimensions. You can continue by clicking continue and then click on the dimension and then continue it till here. The line continues. I'll show you an example. Rectangle, copy, I'm pasting the rectangle here. DIM dimensions. I clicked on the dimension, I've given a dimension here, and we are still in the command, we didn't exit the command. And if you want to continue, press C, press enter, and then select the first line first. Now you can continue clicking here and everything will fall in the same line. Like this. So let's continue giving the dimensions. We give dimensions to this. And then dimensions to this. Continue till here, till here, till here. And then you can, if you want to give a dimension separately, you can give here, or we can pull this side, or you can give within the figure. So that's how we give dimensions to the objects. Now there are a lot of types of dimensions. If you look, there's a linear dimension which is always straight, and there is an angle dimensions which we use. Angle dimensions is, say we have shape PL, polyline. So if you take a linear dimension, which means this is the linear dimension, so it doesn't look for the length of this line, but it sees the length of it over x-axis or projection of the length of the projection over x-axis or y-axis, either like this or we can move like this. That's 756, 657. But it doesn't give you the length. If you want the length, you have to go for linear dimension. So click angled. So this is for the angular lines. Click here, and parallelly to this line you get angular dimensions, which is 1000 millimeters. And if you want to measure the angle, then you can click and go for angular. Click here, click the second, and you get the angle between the two lines. And you can have for the arc the length. If you have an arc segment, if you want to know the dimension for the arc, you can click arc length, and then you click outside. It will say the length of the arc as 15161. We'll check, see, arc length. This arc is 1561. We delete this, and that's all about the basics of dimensioning. Hope you understand. Thank you for watching.